So good morning and good evening all together. Just to reconnect to the teachings and to have some kind of a brief summary of what we have talked last time about the 12th stage of the cycle of life. We managed to cover last time two stages, the first two stages. So I will briefly speak about these two and then we'll continue further. Basically, we have 12 life stages. Everybody will go through these stages. If a person lives basically a whole cycle of life, which means approximately until old age, then everybody will go through this kind of 12 stages. And the value of this categorization is to help to have clarity about the clinical work, about the healing work, about self method of how to observe yourself, methodology, a method in which you will have a mirror-like system to see where you hold and where is the obstruction. This is a very ancient system coming from the ancient teachings of Ayurveda, of acupuncture, Chinese medicine, and of the Jewish tradition. Well, so the 12 stages are, and here I will speak about the two ones that we talked previously, is that the first stage, which is very, very interesting, is the stage of our life which belong to the content of the parents before we were born. This point is very, very interesting because it shows that the life that we live has certain form of materialization, becoming materialized. And then once the parents becoming an older individual, and later on they conceive babies, their life content, whatever they experience in their lives, will go as a content towards the baby. And the baby will carry in his organism the life content, the life summary of the kind of a life that the parents have lived. And this is where you will see either in yourself or in your patient, a situation in which the person will say how he see the similarity between himself or herself to the mother and the father, and how it is difficult. Many, many people will experience the difficulty to see the similarity, which they resist for many years. And then after some time, when they becoming as well parents, they see that they carry the same pattern of which they were resisting when they were teenagers. This is a sign of the content that was transferred to them because of the lifestyle of the parents. And this is what we call the first stage of life. It's the content which is transmitted to our organism from our parents as a result of the life which they have lived. And this point is very, very challenging. Is the clinical point. It is not a point which is philosophical at all. I speak from the point of view of the clinics, not of a philosophy, which means in the clinics we do see the result of the mind structure and the kind of disease and health level of the person, which is the result of the transference from the parents to the child, the kind of life which they have lived. Usually it's either maybe the positive content of the evolution which they have managed to cover in their lives, or on the contrary, there is a high possibility in which some territory which the parent was not able to challenge or to change in his life will be transmitted to the baby organism, and the baby will have to bear or will have to carry in his own life the unresolved issues of the parents. This is a very, very deep point, and from the clinic point of view, we will see it through different symptoms. that I was mentioning in the last lecture, and you're all welcome to hear it. Right now, I will not repeat it all, but you're welcome to hear it, the first one, and to see and to hear yourself the previous introduction.
I will be sending to the group, to everybody, the link to the video in the next 2 days. There will be the intro to the set of lectures, so you will have a better framing of different angles that we will be taking through the lectures, and you have the chance also to hear the previous lecture. So it's a pretty extensive topic, but yeah, thanks for the intro, Kobe.
So, and the next stage that we have mentioned last time is the stage of conceiving, of conception. And it's a stage by itself, which means what is the condition of the parents when they conceive the baby, when the sperm and ovary has met. We see it as a very, very important stage in life. Why? Because the condition of the parents at that time indicates the level of vitality which the person will have later on. We have two main indications about that, or two main situations that we will see in the clinics. One, for example, if the conception was because of laboratory induced mechanism, which means the sperm and the ovary was induced to come together to fertilize one another and then to enforce it into the uterus later on. In this case, we will have many situations that we have witnessed that the organism is a little bit weaker than usual and has more respiratory or immune system deficiency. Another classical example of that is if the two parents were intoxicated by drugs. If they were under drugs and they were not balancedly under their own organic capacity, then this kind of imbalance in the conception would appear later on as an energy pattern in the baby organism. These things are very evident, and they are also treatable. Whenever I speak about that, I always mention the hope which is there, which whatever you can see, things which are primal to our birth are traceable and are treatable. We know how to relate to them. We know how to see the life pattern which is originated from that time, and then how to treat it through homeopathy. So we have two stages right now, the before birth and then the conception. The third stage that we'll put right now the emphasis is the stage of 9-month pregnancy, which is
just 1 second. Sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't say before. If you guys have any questions that something is perhaps unclear, meanwhile, Kobe's having the lecture, feel free to ask questions at any time. Yeah, sorry.
Yes, that's right. We're having right now a conversation. It's not me giving a lecture. Anytime which you feel you want to add or to ask or to maybe to raise an opposition idea, you're welcome.
Yeah, don't be shy, really. It's good to have a debate and perhaps go deeper in some aspects you're more interested in.
So I would like to focus right now on the third stage of life, which is the 9-month pregnancy. It's very, very interesting because it's a whole stage by itself. The time of pregnancy, the time of the evolution of the fetus in the uterus, everything which the mother goes through, the main point is that everything which the mother goes through produce an imprint in the organism of the evolved baby. And there are two things to consider here. One is that in the pregnancy process, there are many things which are normal to the pregnancy situation, which means symptoms like vomiting in the first trimester, symptoms like dizziness or aversion to the husband, for example, aversion to smells, weakness, dizziness, can be also an anemic condition, are very normal to this stage and not necessarily will produce an impact on the baby's uterus, on the baby organism. Things that we will leave a mark or a signature in the organism of the baby has to do with things which are uncommon, surprisingly traumatic experiences, or a heavy medical disease which has to be treated. For example, high blood pressure or diabetes or toxication, being toxic, blood toxic, can also have an impact on the baby evolution. This is from the physical point of view. From the emotional point of view, if the mother goes through some kind of a very traumatic experience, that thing will definitely have an impact on the baby uterus, on the baby organism, and will show its result or its effect later on in life. I'll give you several examples which are common to see in the clinic. Again, once more, I'm speaking from the point of view of clinics. So I'll give you several classical symptoms which are classical to see when we see the situations of seeing which might appear in the pregnancy time that will have an impact later on in the fetus organism. One example, which is very, very classical, is if there was an emotional trauma while the pregnancy will occur. For example, there is somebody who is very close to the mother has died, for example. I have several cases which I've seen that in the time of the pregnancy, one which is very close to the mother accidentally has died, surprisingly, which produced a very, very deep emotional effect on the mother. And later on, this kind of grieving and grief effect is witnessed in the child, later on in the grown-up, later on in his or her life. So if there is an emotional trauma like that, which is very, very traumatic, another example, a woman, a pregnant woman, which she has witnessed a car accident, which was very, very devastating. For her, it was a very, very shocking experience to see people dying on the street. And for her, it's a shock-like experience to see all this blood and devastating things. As a result, she entered into a shock. The shock that she felt produced a great impact on the fetus as it is born. Another example, which is also quite witnessed, which is also very, very important to consider, and in the case taking or in the observation of the life of the person later on in his evolution, is what was the attitude of the mother, what was the feeling of the mother concerning the very fact that she is pregnant. Which means whether the pregnancy is a wanting one or an unwanted one, whether the pregnancy is something that was welcomed or came unwelcomed. This is something which is very, very deep, the situation. And in case the pregnancy is an unwanted pregnancy, it will produce a very strong impact on the baby's life later on, from the point of view of feeling that this life or this world is a world which is unmatched by him. You will feel lonely, you will feel without any connection to society, you will feel as if he is an outcast. And this connection between the feeling of not a part of this world, as if you are a foreigner, as if you are a foreigner to this culture, as if you should not born in this culture, is something which is can be, it's not the only reason, but it can be originated from a situation in which the person was born in an unwanted pregnancy. So this point is very, very deep. a part of the unwanted pregnancy, there is a possibility of the way the conception is done, which means if the pregnancy was happened through rape, for example, or through some forced situation, and right now the mother has to bear a child, that the child is, for her point of view, is a punishment-like situation, this kind of attitude, this kind of feeling will go into the baby organism and will produce a very deep impact.
Yeah, there last time, maybe just to give an interesting example from the last lecture, there was a participant that actually experienced just this. When Kobe was explaining this, she mentioned that she was the fourth kid in her family and that her first brother was basically born because her mom was raped. And she saw like her brother always had problems in his life. He was struggling with addiction, alcohol, was very aggressive, have a lot of behavioral problems. So it influences the brain and the behavior of the child. Meanwhile, she was the fourth kid from the same mom. And just because she was a wanted child, she said she tended to be always happy, never had any problems, and was a much more balanced. She had a much more balanced psychological and biological system. So it's a really interesting example, I think, because it's the parents are same, everything is the same, just what happened at the conception time. Yeah, please.
Yes. So now the main point that we should see when we examine a case that we suspect there is some life pattern which is the result of the time of pregnancy, one of the most common symptoms that we will see is some emotional behavior who has no causation. The most common one to see is a person who feels grief or sad or frustration or anger. When you ask the person why you feel in this way, the person will feel, will say, I feel in this way without any visible, tangible reason. This is the way I feel throughout my life. And I cannot see any kind of event or any kind of reason or causation why I feel this way. This is very difficult to see, especially in the grief emotional family, like grief, sadness, depression, lack of motivation, things which are going more towards the depressive mood, depressive emotions, that if you will try to investigate why the person feels depressed, unmotivated, grief, sad, and so on, the person will not know how to connect these emotions to any event, and how, in which way to see the reason why he is the way he is. This is one of the signs. When we see this kind of clinical situations, we go towards the investigation of what happened in the pregnancy. Even if the mother is not there any longer, I'm trying to have some kind of any family member which is still alive who will give us some kind of clues. What was the situation of the mother when she was pregnant with this person? In the majority of the cases, we see some life event which was very, very powerful on the mother's mind, which produce an impact on the baby's organism, and later on it evolves into a whole mind structure. And the main point about to trace it is where this situation was, it can be attached to any event or not. In the very majority of the cases of this category, the person will say, I feel in this way forever. This is my how I know myself. I know myself as a person who is walk with a cloud of sadness, with a walk with a cloud of grief, with a cloud of depression, with a cloud of lack of motivation to life. And this is how I know myself. I've been in this way throughout my life. The reason why it will come up in the clinic is because this situation, the grief or the sadness or the depression, is tending to be an obstacle. See, The fact that this situation turned to be an obstacle indicates that this emotional layer, although it's unevident by any life event which was there, it's not a part of the source or the basic personality tendency of that individual. And this is something which is very, very deep in this situation. Because the person will say, I feel depressed throughout my life, and I see that this kind of tendency for depression obstructs my capacity to evolve in my relationship, in my work, in my capacity to have more frontiers, in my investigations in university, in the laboratory, and so on. I feel that this kind of inner depression is an obstruction to my capacity to feel joy, and everybody around me in the bar, in the what do you call it, a free hour or a happy hour. I see everybody in the happy hour smiling and having a beer or so, and I with them, I laugh, but in myself there is no laughter, in myself there is grief, and I envy. And then this person will feel that there is emotional things which is in him, which is, although he is very strongly aware of this emotional dynamic, these emotional dynamic are unchanged by awareness. This is one of the signs that these emotional traces or emotional patterns are coming before birth dynamic. When a person is aware that he feels something, and the awareness and the cognitive understanding has no impact on these emotions. The main point why I'm saying that is that when a person comes to these realizations, it indicates that it's a layer-like emotional thing which was imprinted in the organism, which does not belong to his authentic identity, to authentic potential, to the authentic kind of personality qualities which he should have gone with. Which means it's a good sign. It's a sign that shows that there is some kind of a gap, some kind of a possibility to spread, to split, to detach to this emotional dynamic from the essence of who the person is. So when we see that, this is one of the signs and the clues to go into this situation of what happened in the time of pregnancy. So far, do we have any questions or any comment?
I will say something meanwhile people perhaps think about their question. I think it's very interesting, this view that you just presented, that perhaps it has two different angles. One, it's from the person, how it tries to understand itself and its own struggles or patterns or reactions to certain things, or a general mind framing of situations, right? One can be through grief or depression, or there are other type of understanding as well. And many times, like you said, like cognitively understanding this, it's helpful because you're more aware of it, but you somehow feel there is like a glass wall, right? There is a struggling feeling that you are not able to just get rid of it or manage it. So that for the person, I think it's good then to reflect and to be more compassionate to itself about the deeper root of the problem, like you mentioned. So that's one aspect of how the person can relate to it and understand itself better, and perhaps try to manage it in different manners than just framing. And then it's from the homeopathic or therapeutic view, how we investigate this, and then we understand when we see something like this that we will call a layer, we see that it's not part of the core essence personality of the person, but it's just something that was put on top of the person because the effect that through the hormones, nervous system, energy level got imprinted from the parent to the kid. So the therapist has an additional tool to be able to treat this directly to the root cause. So I just wanted to kind of split them.
Yes, definitely. We call it a layer in homeopathy. And again, the way to trace a layer, which is a cover up on the inner potential of the person is the very fact that the person starts to be aware that there is emotional obstruction in his life, which produces in his life obstruction. This very awareness is an indication that the person is inside some kind of a trap, which in this case, homeopathy is very, very useful. I'll give you one clinical example which I've seen some years ago to show to you the kind of how time doesn't make any difference when it comes to these stages from the clinical point of view. Is that I've seen a young man, he was 45 years old, and he for many years tried to conceive, but the sperm that he has was not so strong or so efficient to be able to conceive. So he came to the clinic with the idea or with the request to help him to heal or to make the sperm count in a high degree or in a better potency. So in the case taking, the behavior patterns which he represented shows exactly what I'm saying right now, that we have in him certain kind of depression and sadness, which is it's there, it's produced in his life obstruction for communication. The communication is not so fluent. You feel a barrier, you feel detached from people, society. He feels unconnected. He feels that even with his wife, his partner, he feels a little bit difficulty to share emotions. He feels that this is an obstacle. He would like to become more connected. He would like to become with high capacity to feel the togetherness. So as a result of all these signs, we went to the time of pregnancy, what happened with his mother, and the story goes like that she conceived the baby when she was very young, she was only 17, and she did not want the child. And she heard that the best way to make a natural abortion, also she was in a society where abortion medically was not allowed. So she was trying everything she could to make the fetus fall in a natural ways, which means she heard that if she will lift heavy things, the baby will fall down. So she exercised every day by lifting a very heavy furniture. Like she was saying that he was saying that she told him that she were able to lift up a piano. She had a piano, she used to lift up a piano again and again with the idea to make the fetus fall. Now, the fetus did not fall, so she heard that if she will beat the belly with a hammer, take a hammer and to beat herself, in this way, the fetus will fall. So she used to beat herself very violently. And the baby has not failed. And idea she tried for the whole 9th pregnancy to make the baby fall, and she could not succeed. At the end, this person came out, and she's saying, or she was saying to him for the first year how she is regret. She was sharing with him all these experiences and how she feels regret. The feeling of guilt in her was very, very strong. But nevertheless, the whole 9-month pregnancy, she had in her a very, very active attempt to make the baby fall down. And this kind of very, very strong motivation was planted in the organism of the baby, evolved in him a feeling that he is unworthy, unwelcome, and unless he will the only way to prove his existence, to prove that he is worthy to be alive, is only when he shows success in his life. If he shows failure, he is unworthy to be alive. As a result, from this experience, the organic area which was affected was the sperm. So he received a remedy in homeopathy which has to do with the unwanted situation, an unworthy feeling of which he was grown with from the birth. And then as a result, 1 year later, he was able to conceive, and right now we have 2 children soon after this treatment, which means the point I'm saying is that once we trace a certain kind of a life pattern, which is right from birth, even before birth, the time has no meaning. How many years has passed on, and how many, what is the thick layer of life experiences that prove this kind of attitude which evolved in him because this feeling is not something to produce a disturbance in the capacity to treat it. This example we saw during the years many times, how time has no aspect, there's no a barrier to the capacity to touch the real point and to treat it. So this, I think, is a very wonderful point about homeopathy and how it cut through time, through a very thick layer which might appear as impossible. Nevertheless, we have the capacity in homeopathy to relate to a very deep-rooted situations.
Just maybe a short thing. I think because we are now going to the pre-pregnancy stage, the conception that we did last time. Right now we're doing pregnancy and delivery. And actually, I don't know how other people feel. I hope, guys, feel free to share any of your feelings. But these are really conditioning times for how the baby and the person develops, right? And they're so deeply ingrained in the organism that it's much harder to affect them just through self-awareness, and that later stages give us more flexibility to understand which are the challenges we are meeting in the later stages, and perhaps the imprints are not so deep. So I just wanted to somehow differentiate how these stages are heavier. Let's have a heavier imprint on the person than the later ones, so it's a bit stronger.
So if I will summarize this stage of pregnancy, I will give an example from ancient Egypt and ancient China, that in these cultures, they used to have special gardens, which is suitable for women who are pregnant, because they want to make ecology, which bring the highest balance, the highest well-being of that woman. So this well-being feeling, this harmonious feeling, will go into the fetus and will produce right from the start an effect on the fetus, which means they were aware, very strong awareness of how the mother's condition have an effect on the baby evolution. Another example from the ancient world has to do with the way acupuncture, Chinese medicine, evaluate the life stages. And they say that basically we have in our life 3 equal stages. 3 equal stages, where and when they say equal, they also refer equal by the depth and the time length. The time length are equivalent. Life is 1/3, 1/3, and 3/3. The first 1/3 is the conception until delivery, which means the 9-month pregnancy. They say that this 1/3 of life is the 1/3 which was happening, whatever was happening at that time is not possible for change. It's something which is fixed, and it's unable to change whatever the imprints are there in the organism. Then the next third is in between the conception of the delivery into the sexual maturity, approximately 12 to 13. And then the last third is from 13 or 12 to the very end. And they say that these 3 parts are equal because of the depth of what is imprinted in the organism. They say that in the first stage, which means in the pregnancy, the dynamic, whatever is there for life. But we see in homeopathy that it's not like that, and we see that there are ways how to relate to things which, from the Oriental point of view, are fixed. So also in acupuncture, they consider the pregnancy time to be a stage in life where every month there will be other systems who are becoming to be more operated and more active. And then again, in homeopathy, we do have the ways how to relate to things that, from the point of view of acupuncture, seems to be irritable. And by that, I would like to conclude this stage. The main point, again, which I would like to emphasize, is that the very majority of the symptoms that the woman naturally will feel in pregnancy are natural, even if they are difficult, if they are painful, or even they are emotionally not easy to bear, and they will not leave an imprint. The one who will leave an imprint are mainly a dangerous physical medical situation, for example, diabetes or hypothyroid, and emotional trauma, which is surprisingly surprisingly a situation in that woman's life, or the basic attitude towards the pregnancy. The basic attitude, if it's unwanted or wanted. This is the three ingredients which will produce an impact in this stage. And if there is no any comments or questions, I will go further.
Any comments, questions? Okay.
So the next stage, which is the fourth one, is the delivery itself. Basically, delivery, which is the fourth stage, is the stage of basically what we say. This is the first time the baby meets the world. So we have three stages, which was before the baby has met the world, but the fourth stage, the delivery itself, is the entry stage into this world. And this is a very, very fundamental, very, very important experience, which is very, very important. All the ancient cultures put a lot of emphasis about the first breath, about the first time when there is exposure of the baby's organism to this world, the time in the day in the week, the month in the year, and the place on planet Earth determines a lot the effect on the baby's organism because of several aspects of influences which was there when the baby was delivered. But the delivery itself, how the baby was delivered, the process of delivery is also something which is very, very deeply considered in our clinics. Has many, many meanings. The kind of delivery, whether it was natural or not, whether it was with some kind of medical problems, the baby has stuck for several hours in the uterus canal. All these will have later on an impact on the organism, which might leave traces for the whole life. Basically, the way the baby has to be born is through the uterus to the vagina to this massage where the organism will go through that kind of very, very intense experience. This kind of a massage, this kind of going through the canal is extremely important for the preparation of the way the organism meets the world. And if this kind of massage, which is very, very intense experience to the baby and to the mother, is not there, the baby's organism is not fully prepared to meet this world. From the point of view of clinics, the things which we see, which are the most, I would say, devastating or producing effect on the baby's organism is a vacuum delivery in which the baby is sucked out with some kind of a machine as a result of some stagnation. The baby is stuck in the canal. and this procedure has to be done. I'm not here criticizing at all this procedure. If it has to be done, it has to be done. So I'm not saying anything at all against this procedure, but what should we expect to see from this kind of a vacuum delivery is that there will be some strong effect on the organism as a result of this kind of very, very violent experience to the baby's organism. And from the point of view of the baby, the experience is that it was violated. The brain and the skull as an entity that lives remember this experience as a very, very horrific experience. And from the point of view of the consequences, what kind of consequences will be the outcome of all the enforced by force, when the baby is pushed outside by force? Again, if it has to be done, medically speaking, it has to be done for the survival of the baby. So I'm not saying anything at all about the necessity of the procedure, but the outcome of this kind of situation will be a very, very strong traumatic effect on the brain, which the consequences later on will be through what we see right now as ADHD, or all the attention deficit disorder, all the difficulty of children to study. Many cases of this kind of difficulty to learn, to concentrate, to memorize, to sit down quietly, to be able to be with themselves, not to be stimulated easily, not to be scattered from stimulations from the outside surroundings, is the result of the way the baby was delivered. Very, very clearly we see this connection, especially in the deliveries, which has to do with a kind of a damage which was left in the skull when the baby was pushed by force outside. There is another trace of this kind of delivery, which is a tendency for fear. We see that the children who are more fearful will have night disturbances, sleep disturbances, together with nightmares of several issues coming up in the nightmares, also are symptoms which are the result of some forced delivery. Again, once more, I will say that I'm not saying anything at all about the necessity of this procedure. If it has to be done, people should do it. But again, if it was done in this way, sooner we relate to that, the best it is for later on. If we will not relate to that, if we will not relate to the kind of this delivery, later on in life, there will be an emotional or mental evolution of this situation as a consequences, which will produce a lot of social and studying difficulty for the baby, for that child. The next kind of delivery, which is also very common, is the cesarean operation, that the mother was operated and the baby was taken out through operation. This also is quite common in our culture. And here the baby is not, there is not any experience at all, what I was saying before about that massage, which prepares the organism to meet this world. Over here, the baby is coming out, and the shift, the change from the uterus environment into the environment of this world are very, very traumatic, very quick, very, very happening in a way which has no preparation. These children usually evolve later on a pattern of a feeling of a delay reaction. They evolve a feeling of a certain kind of sluggishness, certain kind of not being with the rhythm. There is some kind of slowness in them as a result of this kind of unprepared situation. Also, they are very, very sensitive from the point of view of the touch of skin. Skin are very, very vulnerable to any kind of stimulation. They evolve mind pattern, which is in between very strong responses to sensual stimulations like light, like touch of the skin, like noises, as opposed to difficulty to comprehend, difficulty to think, difficulty to react to what they understood. They understood, and the digestion of how should be the response to what they understood. There is over there some delay reaction, which later on will appear as many kind of studying difficulties. Also in school, there will be with these children a lot of study difficulties, which from the point of view of conventional medicine, these two examples will have to receive medication which is done right now throughout the world, like Ritalin or Prisma. Maybe it has other names in other countries, but all this medication which produce the effect of concentration and memory in children, in the very majority of the cases, has to do by origination of the kind of delivery which was there. We will investigate about what was the delivery, and we will see that there are traces of the kind of delivery into how it produces an impact on the present time in the baby's life, or the child life, when it comes to study processes, which means the cognition, how as the person grows up, and which has to do a lot with the brain faculties, will show the consequences of how the brain was or carries still trauma experiences, which later on evolve into difficulty of studying, difficulty to work with the mind as a cognitive studying tool. Another example of very common things which are quite common to see is in case there is an umbilicus cord which is strangled around the neck of the baby. At times it's possible to trace it, at times it's not. There will be deliveries in which the mother will push, as she should, of course, and without awareness to the situation, there is an element of a strangled, like a rope, of the umbilicus cord around the neck of the baby, which as the mother pushes, it produces a suffocation feeling up to the possibility of an actual death of the baby because of this kind of contraction around the neck. Some children will be born with oxygen deficiency, and some of them, there are situations in which, medically speaking, the baby was born dead because of that, because of this situation, which is a very, very devastating situation. And those which went through this kind of experiences, which means is like to enter into this world as if they are hanged, as if they are suffocated, as if they are, as if coming to this world, the organism remember it as a very, very dangerous experience. See, this is like if you enter into a new world, which the basic imprint of the way you enter into this world is that you are about to die. You are about to die by suffocation, by strangling, by drowning, which later on have a very, very strong impact, very, very strong on the baby's organism. Later on, we will see many kind of fears and unreasonable fears which are very, very total in the way it comes. Fear of death, fear of height, fear of close places, fear of water, fear of crowded places, fear which is analogic fear, which will come very, very intensely in a strange and weird situations, coming very spontaneously out of the blue. As a result of this kind of basic feeling that this world is a world in which the possibility to die is very, very, very near, very nearby. There are several cases which I've seen during the years that the result of this kind of experience, which means strangled, which means suffocated, which means almost a death, almost being born death to this world, produce later on in life an epileptic expression, epileptic manifestation of this fearful situation. The fear is so strong, the fear of dying, fear of life is so uncertain, life is so unstable. The capacity to relate to this fear, which is very, very primal, without any reason, coming spontaneously in a very high intensity, was so strong, the physical response was epileptic fit. And there are several, quite numerous of epileptic cases in which the treatment was aimed not to the epileptic condition as to the way the person was delivered, which means the kind of fears, the kind of overwhelmed death experience, which is imprinted in the baby's organism right from birth. As a matter of fact, these days, I'm right now treating a woman. She is 42 years old, 2 children, and she was born in this way that she was born strangled, blue. They have to revive her after she was delivered. And at the age of 12, she starts to evolve epileptic fit with a very, very heavy-duty symptomatology when it comes with the epilepsy, alongside whatever was determined if epilepsy will come or not is the intensity of fear. Once you will feel the fear, fear of dying, fear of the uncertainty of the future, fear of the element of the unknown in life, the fear is so strong and so overwhelming, the response of that will be through epileptic fit. And she receiving right now for the last several months several remedies which relate not to the epileptic fit as to the way she came to this world, which means by a dying effect of being strangled. And we see so far a very good result. She becoming really, really healed, better, which means for several months no epileptic fit. It used to be a part of her life. Also, we see that the intensity of the fear is gradually fades away. This situation that we see that there are emotional or mind traces, which is evolved because of the way of delivery, very, very deep. As I was saying before about the third stage of pregnancy, over here is very similar. And over here as well, we will see a whole mind and emotional structure which produce a lot of life difficulty for the person. And the person that does not know how to relate to it. There's not any capacity, there is not any knowledge, any cognitive tool in which way to relate to this primal emotional or mind imprints. The reason is that all these kind of organic imprints from the first stage to the fourth are there before the origination of the mind, before the origination of the cognitive faculties, which means when you try to use the cognitive faculties to analyze yourself and to come to any rational understanding why you feel the way you feel, but the causation of why you feel the way you feel is there before the mind faculties was evolved, the mind faculties are not the tool how to relate to that. The person will feel many, many times, the person will feel great helplessness and depression because whatever she or he can do, any kind of awareness attempt which you try to do is useless, And the feeling is that there is something which is there without capacity to understand it, without capacity to relate to it. It's a very overwhelming experience. It comes in a wave-like, without any preparation. The person will suddenly feel something which is very, very powerful. The overwhelming experience will be very, very strong. And it will also will lead to some physical effect because it's there, organically speaking, before the mind is there. Therefore, this emotional experience, always they will have a physical symptom that goes alongside them, alongside the emotional behavior. Whenever we see that, we always should investigate about what happened in the delivery, which is very, very significant. Usually we will find some traces, we will find some element of a connection of the things which happened there and in which way it produced an impact. Another point which I would like to mention about this stage, which is also very common in our culture, is the point of the cesarean delivery, which is in the very majority of the cases, right now in our culture, some people will have a planned, what they call a planned delivery, which means they will schedule, they will look in the calendar, they look in the schedule. I've seen many cases like that, and they say, for me, the most convenient day in the week and time in the day to do this kind of procedure would be at, for example, Monday, 9 o'clock in the morning. And then the surgeon will look on his, in his schedule, in his calendar, and they will decide together which time and which date is good for them to do this procedure. From our kind of understanding, this is something which is not the right thing to do. It's not the right thing at all to decide for the baby when the baby should come to this world, because there is certain kind of natural dynamic of preparation, which the baby needs to prepare, needs to come in its own time. If there is any medical need in which, unless there will be cesarean operation, it might put the baby or the mother into danger, of course, you should do it, but only after the water break. The water break is the sign that the baby is about to come, naturally speaking, and this is the time for him to come. And the right time of the baby to come is very, very significant. When you force the baby to enter to this world unprepared, there will be an unprepared situation in the baby, which means the baby always will be to some extent deficient in some aspects. It can be in a physical aspect or can be in an emotional aspect. But there will be later on a whole sphere of things which as the baby will grow up into an adult, there will be always a feeling that there is some brick stones in the physical, emotional structure which is missing. It can be in relationships, can be physically speaking, can be in physical stamina, can be in the capacity to face challenges. There will be some kind of ingredients which did not evolve well. Also here, I will say that in homeopathy, we have the ways how to relate to this kind of missing brickstones and how to fill up the gap. Nevertheless, always when I put into a place that I have to give advice about that, I say that if there is a necessity for cesarean, which is medically thin, definitely do it, but do it in the time of the baby, not the time of your business or the time of your whatever. Do it when the baby has to come, only then do it, which means once there is a water break, then do it. And later on, if there will be a cesarean, we will know how to compensate and how to bring once more the organism into the right place, but don't do it in a planned way, which the baby is born by force before the time, for the right point of operation. Over here as well, if there is any questions or comments or anything at all, you are definitely welcome. And if not, I will continue.
Yes, please feel free to even have any comments. We actually were thinking to leave the last 20 minutes or so for the Q&A section. So yeah, feel free to ask anything about those stages or any influence you may see in your life, or somebody you know, or anything that you are curious about. And if no, Kobe, should we continue with this stage or the other ones?
Go further.
Um,
We go to the fifth stage. If there's no question, if everything is clear.
So, any questions, comments?
If I summarize the fourth stage, the main point which I would like to say as a summary of this stage is that when the baby is born, it's traumatic experience by nature. The very, very dynamic itself is a trauma-like experience, although it's a kind of a natural trauma, which has in it all the ingredients are there to make sure that this kind of temporarily traumatic experience will be overcome well by the organism. The main, if it's a natural delivery, which means there was nothing in particular, the main element of what we call as a trauma-like is the result of the change of the environment of the baby from a uterus environment, which is very comfort, Garden of Eden-like. In the ancient culture, the image of the uterus is as if the baby evolved in paradise-like environment, and the change, the transformation from a uterus environment into this world environment is very, very dramatic. Dramatic from the point of view of the exposure of a clean organism, which whatever is there from the point of view of any kind of natural forces will have a very, very strong impact in that organism, which later on will stay there for the whole life. This is what they call in the ancient world the astrological experience, in which the astral element of that time will have a very strong impact on the baby's organism. The position of the stars, the time of the day, the place on planet Earth, if it's day or night, the moon phase, and so on, will have a very, very strong effect, as well as the ecological vibrations. If the area where the baby is born, ecologically speaking, is clean or not, if there is pollution in the environment or not. And as well, as I was saying before, the kind of experience for the baby's organism if the baby is born with the connection to the mother, and how if the split from the mother is too quick and for too long, it also produces a kind of a trauma for the baby, which again, the baby has the power to overcome it. But if the split is for too long, then it will leave a very, very strong impact, which will stay for basically for the whole life. About this kind of a quick separation from the mother without any immediate connection. It will leave later on the impact of being a foreigner, being abandoned, being unsafe, being unprotected, being unnourished. And all these things will remain later on for many, many years, which will influence the person relationship in intimacy, the person in emotional or social connections, and also the person from the point of view of the capacity to work with the mind. As I was saying before, many times the baby has the power to overcome all these things, but the main point to remember about this stage, the stage of delivery, the stage of the entry door to this world, is that whenever we see that there is emotional waves, emotional patterns, which is untraced by any kind of life event, and the person feels overwhelmed by a flow of very intense emotions, which coming surprisingly without any possibility to trace the causation of why they come, but they come in a storm-like, overpowering the mind, and the person cannot see or understand what happened. So all this is a very, very classical signs of procedure of delivery. And then that will be for us the clue to go and to investigate what happened in time of delivery, in which way it was done. And through the information that we will receive about that, we will have also the ways and the means how to relate to it. And one point of summary which I would like you to remember is that the very majority of what we see nowadays in our culture as deficit, attention deficit disorder or hyper attention deficit disorder. The very majority of these cases is because of delivery. So once we, in treatment, once we relate to the delivery, once we relate to the kind of delivery who was there, through homeopathy, of course, then later on, we see also how the capacity of that child to once more study better, to use the mind better, is evolving quite a bit because of this situation of a traumatic experience, which remain as a memory like on a cellular level in the brain. The brain is the area who I would say becoming affected the most by the kind of wrong deliveries, which produce imprint on the nervous system, which will stay there, can stay there for the whole life. But again, once more, I would say that it's definitely treatable, although it's very, from the point of view as you treat adults, it's many years there, and the last point which I will say about that, and there are many more things to say, but the last, just to summarize it, is whenever we see a historical thing like that, which means a person which came to this world in a delivery, which left in his body, in the brain, on the nervous system, a very strong imprint, a person will walk as becoming adult, he will walk in his life with certain kind of inner feelings, which is ununderstandable by the mind. The person will not know what does he feel. And from where this sensation or emotional wave-like storm are coming from. As a result, the person will, because the person in our culture will evolve into a rational being, the person will evolve certain kind of a life attitude and a life strategy and a life story that give explanations, that build up a whole story about this unclear and pre-birth or in the delivery experiences, imprints which has no capacity to relate to them. But nevertheless, a person is a rational being. Therefore, he will evolve a whole philosophy and a whole mind excuses, which will try to put it in some kind of an order, which will try to put some causation, some understanding, some explanations why he feels the way he feels, he or she. And then there will be a whole life story, which behind that is the attempt to give explanation to something which is unrational. And whenever we see this kind of life stories, which is unmatched by the symptoms, this is also for us a clue to look into some imprints which are the before birth imprints. Okay, so this is the summary, and if we have some, again, if anybody wants to respond, please, and if not, we'll go further.
Yeah, I would like to say one thing, and that it's this last point that you made, it's really, really interesting in the sense like, I heard once the expression psychological immune system, that basically the person creates a story to protect its core essence with some logical, rational explanation to be able to deal with the discomfort or the overwhelm of an emotion, of a current emotional state, right? But it's basically a protection or coping mechanism to be able to make sense of their own emotional struggles, basically, to be able to cope with them, right? Anybody else has any other question or comment?
Many times in our culture nowadays, I mean, don't understand me wrong, because I'm not trying to enter into whatever we're facing right now in our world, but I've seen in the last 1 year several cases in which the conspiracy theory was very, very, very strong in their mind. Right now, because of the corona, because many people, even if you don't, you take away the corona, the last, I would say, 10 years, there are many, many people which build up a whole life story around the conspiracy idea. That the government is trying to plant in your brain chips. I don't know. Every time I hear a new stories, which, you're trying to think from where this story coming from. And I had several cases in the last 1 year, once the corona started, that the main inner motivation of that individual is to very, very strong inner feeling that there is something there which is hidden, and you receive a partial information, and as a result, there is some higher forces that govern your life, and you are just a victim, just a small, like an ant, like anybody can step on your life and to crush you. And the inner feeling is that you are totally governed by mysterious forces which navigate your life according to their will. Many stories about, or many theories about the UFOs, like entities coming from outside this planet. And then when I was examining this dynamic, why and what is the causation and the inner reasoning for this individual to evolve this idea, this conspiracy idea, I came to the conclusion that the person in the third stage, which is pregnancy, and in the fourth stage, which is delivery, there was over there some traumatic experience either of the mother and in the delivery, which, as I was saying before, left a very, very strong imprint in the brain or in the organism that this world is not safe. This world is a world which you should be aware, because death can come at any moment. And then, as a result, when the person grows up with this feeling that this world is a world where you cannot feel comfort here, and you cannot feel open and free because the threat is there all the time. Again, the threat is the result of being born, for example, strangled, being born, for example, with the wrong nutrition, being born with certain kind of traumas of the mother while she was pregnant. For example, she experienced things like that. Later on, the person has become more and more adult. He will try to find inner kind of psychological explanations why he feels all the time threatened. Because of what? And then the solution would be because there is conspiracy. Because there is some forces which trying to govern you. What I'm saying is that in our culture, what we see right now, there are many people which evolve all sorts of very, very strong mind theories, which is not real. Is a result of some basic traumas which are in the organism by birth, which there is no any other way to explain them apart of this kind of conspiracy theory. I'm not saying that all of them are like that, but the some which I've seen lately, I have definitely witnessed how the person try to rationalize the inner feeling of being unprotected into what seems to be more rational, which will be a conspiracy theory. Like this, a part of our clinical strategy is that we will always search into what is the basic life strategy that the person has. If we see that there is a certain kind of attitude and strategy that the person feels the need to evolve a very, very strong kind of a philosophy thing that in his life there is no evidence, there's no any kind of evidence why to become so militant or so anarchist or so with ideas that seems to be unconnected to what to a lifestyle that this person lives, this is where we see that there is an attempt of the organism to find some rational understanding of inner feeling which is unmet by anything else apart of that. And this is where we will go into the investigation about the third and the fourth stages, which means pregnancy and delivery.
Yeah, I think we will have to wrap up. That was very interesting. Also, if you still have any comments or questions, I found what you just mentioned really interesting. Also, from the conspiracy theory, sphere, it's becoming very prominent. Perhaps because of the extreme circumstances we are facing. Right? It's everything comes more on the surface in a certain extent. But I don't know. I was trying to think into remedies meanwhile you were explaining, right? And it's really interesting because I see, let me know what's your opinion about it, but many people or remedies that tend to be more fearful will also have not necessarily lean towards the conspiracy theory side, but also to delegating their power of cognition and consideration and just accepting something prior to scrutiny, personal trying to understand, because the background stream of threat or feeling of fear, it very quickly surfaces. Right.
Yes, definitely. Again, we definitely see it. For example, remedies to keep in mind about the process of delivery. If it's soon after delivery and there is trauma, the best one would be arnica, though it's a very common remedy. It's a remedy which is specifically should be given to any kind of a situation that we see an evidence of traumatic delivery. Later on is hypericum. Hypericum is one of the most valuable remedy to any kind of brain or nervous trauma, which later on will leave a mark in the organism for many, many years. Also, stramonium and all the remedies from the Soranus family, like Alosiamos, like belladonna, like Copersicum, are remedies which are relevant for this kind of brain or birth trauma. Aconite is the main remedy to consider in the delivery of a strangled umbilicus around the neck. One of the main remedies, aconite, a feeling of suffocation, a feeling of death, a feeling of immediate death coming. I saw many cases of that. From the point of view of remedies which relate to pregnancy time, they are quite wide. There is not any main themes about that. It's more a matter of the kind of experiences which the mother went through. If the mother went through some kind of very, very strong grieving experience, the main remedy would be natrium muriaticum. Some remedies which has to do with a suicidal attempt in the pregnancy would lead into orum metallicum. And many cases of born into this world and being separated from the mother too early, for too long, which means the connection or the separation was done too quickly for too long, will lead into the magnesia family. This is the main remedies that we should relate to when we see this abandoned feeling. The person grow up into this world feeling abandoned, feeling unbelonging. More there is lack of connection, separation, which is there for too long. For example, babies which has to born into this kind of, I can't remember the name in English. It's a kind of that isolated, isolate like aquarium. That I can't remember the name of that, but nevertheless, but if the baby is there for several weeks because of medical reasons, and again, if it has to be so, it has to be so. But I'm not speaking against that at all. But what I do say is that if you will see these cases in yourself or in your clinic, Tuya is one of the main remedies that will evolve in the baby's organism as a result of this experience, which means a feeling of separation, a feeling of I'm not a part of this world. There is no place for me in this world. This world for me is a foreign place. This remedy will cure the result of this separation later on in life. And again, once we traces this kind of either pregnant or delivery traumas which produce an effect later on in life, the most interesting to see as we look into it is what kind of life philosophy the person is adopting, because they need to have some rational explanation, rational causation. Why life are so? Why do I feel foreigner to this planet? See, some people which I've seen during the years, why I feel, the causation why I feel foreign to this world is because I was separated for 1 month from my mother as soon as I was delivered. So at the age of 30, 35, the way to relate to this kind of inner experience that I feel foreigner, I feel like a foreigner to this world, is to evolve a philosophy that, as a matter of fact, I'm a UFO originated. I'm so foreign to this world, most probably I'm from another planet. Most probably I belong to another time in history. Most probably I belong to, and then there is a whole philosophy which rising up in the person's mind about life and about UFOs and about, you know, terrestrial being, and about I was abducted by foreign whatever, and people was doing on me experiments. I've seen these cases, you know. And the real causation is, again, this is things that that there is an imprint in the organism of which has to do with pregnancy and delivery. Tuya is one of the remedies which later on will evolve. The whole idea that, as a matter of fact, I'm not from here, I'm from Atlantis. I'm from other galaxy. I was adopted, and I was, as a matter of fact, I belong to other race. This, as a inner organic attempt to relate to the situations. Well, we don't have much time to enter into a new stage. We'll keep it for the next time. And again, thank you everybody to participate and to hear us with patience and tolerance. And if there is any questions or whatever, it's right now a good time to do it. And Christina, thank you very much for the way you're organizing all that.
Thanks for being here.
And
maybe... Please go on.
Maybe later on you can send these recordings if people have questions which or some comments which maybe will come later on. Maybe there is things which will bring up thoughts later on. You are welcome to share it with us later on. And Christina will arrange it. Yeah, I just wanted to say that feel free to send us any questions about the topics. It will be also easier for us to organize how much in depth and, you know, we should go in these topics, or perhaps which angles are you interested more in. You can send an email to info@umatribe.com. Also, if you're watching right now this on video, please, you can write even your question in the description box below. And the next videos or the next events, if you're now live, will be also published all together in the YouTube channel of Umatribe. And I will send to the group all the details so you can catch up with the intro, from which aspects we are covering these topics, and the previous lecture, this one, and all the next that are coming. So really feel free to share your thoughts, any type of questions you have, don't be shy, just like really send them to us, no worries. And yeah, thanks to all for coming and for sharing your time with us. I hope you enjoyed these lectures and that they brought some value to you and that were understandable. And yeah, once again, if you have any questions, let us know.
And until the next time, Kobe, thanks for coming and for all your time. So to everybody, stay curious, healthy, and happy. See you at the next one.